we'll start off here by talking about this right off the bat before we get into everything else. And looking here at just, Rotten Tomatoes score, you've got the Tomato Meter critical rating 7. So not that many people have given it a review yet. But it's got 100% and a 52% audience score. Now, the Rotten rating on that one, people saying here, oh, it means it's terrible. That just means half the people out there didn't like it. That's all that means. Is how it operates. Half the people didn't like it. Other half of the people did. And when looking at this, and hold on, I see Cadence here. Hey, what's up, buddy? And then looking at this, just again, kind of like what some of the reviewers are saying about this, maybe. Let's see. All right. Jeffrey Lyles here says, when it works, Revelation's second chapter shows the promise of this take on the MOTU saga, yet too often it takes as many steps backwards as it does forward. And that's a fair criticism. You've got Sid Hant here saying, it doesn't flow as smoothly as part 1, and it skips a handful of vital emotional beats. But part 2 is so packed with enormous ideas that the episode's unevenness feels like a bug and more like an unavoidable feature. Yeah, I mean, look, they could have done more to kind of space it out. All right, they could have done more I would have preferred more episodes to give us more with the characters. But this was giving a setup and a finale. A setup and a conclusion to this storyline. And there was a lot of great references. And there was a lot of interesting events. And there's a lot of interesting revelations, if you will. And a lot of really interesting discussions about stuff. And the whole Rage He-Man was fantastic. You got Jorge Riviera Rubio here. Hey, what's up, man? Says Smith pushes the pedal to the metal, enriching the mythos with humor and heart, developing the characters, giving them depth the original didn't even try. And this, of course, is translated. But that's kind of the point. Have you seen it yet, Caden? Have you seen Masters of the Universe Revelation Part 2?
Yeah, I saw it. And I think it's really also what I realized that, like, what kind of messed them up also is, like, splitting them up in 2 parts was because if you kept them as one single season, then it does feel like what happened was a mid-season finale, and then part 2 was as if if it was on regular TV and they were on a hiatus for like 2 weeks, and then boom, here's the second half of the season. That's what it kind of felt like. But at the same time, there was like they said that there was some unevenness with some episodes where it felt like they could have gone into a bit more into one concept when they went to another concept that was just introduced after that concept was introduced that they didn't really go into. And so it's just like there is some unevenness, which I agree on that. But then again, it's like
I'm not saying it's like 100% perfect.
No, it's not.
I think probably the weakest part of part 2 for me was Tila and the Sorceress, right? Like that whole, and I know that was like a massive emotional arc for the characters, but I kind of felt like it was again like a little bit, I wasn't
underwhelming.
It was, and I wasn't. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
It was a great reveal and everything because I think it was revealed in the first part, that like there's something going on with Tila and the Sorceress and Men at Arms, and then if Enosh was saying that if you are a fan of this whole thing, you'll know exactly what's going on, and Kevin Smith kind of twisted it a little bit, which is like it was a great reveal about like that. Oh yeah, Tila is both the daughter of Man at Arms and the Sorceress and all that stuff. But then there were some emotional things that were there that we visited for like a moment and we didn't revisit after that, which I felt like we wish we could have visited. But then again, you have people who are saying, oh, this is turning into a Tila show. I'm like, but it's not. It's called the Masters of the Universe. It's not called He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. So
yeah, it is. I mean, and the thing is though, but He-Man was never not front and center in one way or another. And I like that, the way part 1 ended was like, you're thinking like, shit, they did it again. And then, it didn't go that way. And then it went a whole other way. And I don't want to spoil it, but I will say one of the things I really got a kick out of was the Clueless reference because the Queen is voiced by Alicia Silverstone. Mm-hmm. Although I do agree with Jess here saying that the script needed a bit of work. It took itself seriously in one part, and then it took itself as a parody with the lines like King Randor saying "kiss the ring." I mean, yeah, there was a bit of that. Again, there was a little unevenness with some of the script writing,
Yeah.
but when you get to the end, when you get to episode 5, and it's like the shit has hit the fan and everything is
Ooh.
ready to go, it's like, you know what, you're in it, you're totally in it, and it's just that they, there was no way they would ever be able to animate this kind of stuff back in the 80s like this. You got, like, I mean, the fact that Cringer actually became Battle Cat without needing to become Battle Cat was really cool.
Right.
Like Cringer, like, stopped being a bitch and like became
Yeah.
Cringer, and like, I mean, there's some good stuff in the season. Like, there's some good stuff there. Like, they
I
took a show
also,
that was for selling toys and they turned it into something great.
yeah, like I was like someone else that I was talking to was like there was like there was moments where, there was moments where the actors kind of like you can tell who's voicing the characters, like when they're like doing not the greatest voice acting, but then the next scene with them will be like the best scene for their character, or
Yeah.
like at least for that episode. And it
Well,
was
did
just
you
like,
did you catch Kevin Smith voiced? I think it was Pigman.
oh yeah,
Like,
that.
I'm listen. I'm like, that's totally freaking. That's
And
Kevin's
there was
voice.
one time when it was Tila versus Skeletor, or like some exchange that they had, or some scene they were in the same scene with. You can tell like that Mark and Sarah. It was Mark and Sarah in that scene. Like it was
Yeah.
like
Oh, I mean, no.
fully
I mean, yeah. I
like
mean, the Mark. Look, I love Mark Hamill as a voice actor, but he only really has a couple different, like,
yeah,
like vocal ranges, so to speak. But that's okay. That's
yeah.
okay. I'm not going to knock
I
that.
mean, he's a great villain.
Yeah. Well, and Skeletor had depth,
Yeah,
right? Like
he did.
Skeletor. And what I loved about that though is, and I don't want to go too far into spoilers because I really enjoyed Skeletor's arc in this, or I should say, Evil Lynn exposing Skeletor's arc, because it's like I mean,
Yeah,
he's like, I have all this power, and he's still just very, very small mindset with what to do with it. You know what I'm,
exactly.
and then from there, like, the apathetic nature of Evil Lynn comes out, and I love how she just kind of hits. She just goes from like zero to peak fuck it mode. you know?
Oh my god! Like I was like, Evelyn was a character that you kind of supported once you found out that she's, like throughout, like in part one, you kind of support her, and you're just like, oh, yeah, she's very sympathetic because she's been used by Skeletor, and then I mean, the mid finale, you find out, oh yeah, she's been definitely used by Skeletor. He's with her the whole time, and then this one, it even furthers that, and it's just like you feel sympathetic for her, but then she does something, you're just like, oh, I still feel sympathy for you, but this is a wrong turn. Like,
Yeah.
okay,
Well, this is a Mia Jones says Kevin messed up the He-Man franchise
Kevin
with his woke
Smith.
crap. Just throw this horrible addition
Such a
away and start over again. Nothing about it was woke, though. That's the whole point. Again, these are words I don't know if people understand the concept. The whole opening of the show is me talking about like an accusation of gaslighting when the term is not even being used accurately. Woke in and of itself just means what? Something that is pro social justice, but there's nothing about the show that is pro social justice. The character of Tila was upset she was lied to. She wasn't just lied to
No,
by her
she
father,
was
she was lied to by her best friend
by
and
everyone.
by everyone who knew. And not
Yeah,
only did they hide who is Prince Adam or who is He Man, it's who is her mother.
and
So
who
she,
is she?
and who is
Like,
she? Yeah, exactly. And so from there, that's why she acted the way that she acted. I'm sorry that kind of character development, that kind of character growth is something you would refer to as woke. Because if it was a man in the same situation, I don't think you would say it like that.
no,
It doesn't work that way. And then, of course, she was very much the lead character, but the show wasn't about her. They went to Subternia, then Preternia. They saved they saved Prince Adam. They brought him back from heaven, and then they were then bringing trying to fight Skeletor, who became Skelegod. There is like a lot that's gone on. So making the accusation that the show was woke, you can argue about the storytelling, you can argue about the script writing and a lot of other angles of it. But let's be realistic here. Calling it woke is not only just massively disingenuous, it's insulting because
it's
it shows
also
you.
it also shows that you're not paying attention to the story at all.
No, the
Like,
story's really good.
the story is like really good. It, like, yes, there's some like uh not inconsistencies, but like some fault lines in the story. But overall, it's an amazing story, and I think overall Kevin Smith, and everyone has pulled it off greatly, and I can't wait to see the continuation. Um, but calling it woke and calling it SJW and all this other stuff is very, like you said, very disingenuous and just lies. Like you're lying
Yeah.
about a project that you like. It's just dumb.
Yeah, I know. This is a show, it's just again, it's uh trying to double down on something, especially in the case of let's say Clownfish TV. They've tried doubling down
Oh
and
yeah.
everything else. I agree with Geek Prime here. Evelyn went all Sarah Connor. I would argue to some extent she went full on fucking Cersei Lannister as
Oh yeah.
well. She
Oh
was like,
yeah.
because Cersei would have burned everything down.
Oh
Cersei
yeah.
wouldn't have cared.
No,
If she
that
felt pushed into the right mode, she wouldn't have given a shit.
that's what I loved about that big whole thing, was just like she's full on, like, going all hell on,
Oh yeah.
like, everywhere. It's just, it's amazing.
Rational Skeptic here with $2, buddy. Thank you. Says, how does this show compare to the 2002 one? I don't know. I never saw it.
Yeah, I only
It
watched like one or two episodes of
it
that
it
one,
came
and
out. Yeah, it came out when I was 20. You know what I mean? Like I
I
was I
watched
was
it like when it was reruns. So
yeah. I never when it came out, I was not really watching that kind of stuff. And it's not to say that like I'm not like I grew up watching He-Man. It's not to say I've never liked He-Man. I've always liked He-Man. I love Masters of the Universe, the 1987 movie.
oh
I've
yeah.
always loved that movie. So it's not to say that I'm not like a fan, but I've never saw it. Maybe I should though. Is it streaming anywhere? Because I'd give it a go.
Let me see.
Remix here asks, do you think Masters of the Universe Revelation would be enjoyable for someone who has no attachment to the He-Man franchise? Yes, because as I just said, like I watched it as a kid. I was a fan of it as a kid, but it was never something that I like fawned over. Like Ninja Turtles, I fawned over. Simpsons, I fawned over. Mario, I fawned over. He-Man, I always enjoyed. I loved the movie, but I was always like that. Like I always felt the concept of He-Man was a bit too pants on head stupid. You know what I mean? Where it's like, if you think about it, it's mysticism, magic, or mysticism, medieval, and like science, right? Like it's this weird, like cyberpunk wizard shit.
It's
And
on Voodoo.
it's on Voodoo. Okay.
Yeah.
It's a cool concept, but it's also like, it was designed to sell
To
you
make
toys. That's what
toys.
it was.
Yeah.
So, and to give you guys an idea, because if a lot of people out there don't realize this, GI Joe was designed to sell you toys. There was a show called Mask that was
I
kind
mean,
of like a GI Joe knockoff. That was designed. Fucking hell. Here's the biggest example of this one. When Hasbro came out with the Transformers line of toys, they needed a way to market it. They needed a conduit, so they created a television show in order to sell toys. That's what life was like back in the 80s and 90s. That's what so people who are younger than, let's say, that are younger than probably 25, I think, maybe didn't grow up with that world and didn't grow up with like the constant bombardment of these action figures. And speaking of action figures and a person who would know a thing or two about them, Enosh is here. What's up, dude?
Yo. I was literally just like chilling, and I saw that you were talking about this, and I was like, you know what? Yeah, I need to talk about this.
Yeah, it's good. I'm just saying, man, like I really, we talked about this before when the first part dropped,
Yeah.
and like how well done the first part was. And
For sure.
then I was waiting for this one, and I really, really liked it. I thought it was really fantastic.
Heck yeah. I mean, this is it was absolutely fantastic. I mean, one I had to quote one of our good friends that we do lots of videos about. Hashtag Enosh was right. Enosh told you all after part one to not get your panties all in a bunch because it was woke and it was all about Tila and she was gonna be the new He-Man and all that bunk. I mean, anybody who watched the original series and read not only that, but I mean but read the mini comics, the comics that established the lore for that. Kevin Smith did a tremendous job of combining all of it including
that's the thing.
including the early 2000s series. I mean, I was not a huge fan of the early 2000 series, but I did watch it, and you can find it on YouTube, Matt. By the way,
okay.
It's the entire series is right here on YouTube.
All right, I'll have to give it a watch. Yeah,
I mean, it's good. It's a retelling basically of the original.
Oh,
just updated.
Okay,
you know what I mean? They do add other things. I don't want to say
sure.
that, but
well, I'll tell you this though. This is the thing with Revelation that kind of caught my attention. It expanded the lore.
Yes.
You know, and I'm not the biggest, like, I like lore. I wouldn't call myself the hugest lore junkie out there, but if you can get me on some good lore, you will make me a fan. That's how this works. Like, you know, I mean, take for example, Ghostbusters, the video game, right? Mm-hmm. It ties into 1 and 2, and it tells you how the ooze got underneath Manhattan in the first movie or in the second movie. And guess what? It's all tied in to the building from the first movie, and who Yvonne Shandor was, right? Or Ivor Shandor.
Okay.
So it's like there's lore there that they built into it, and that is considered canon again, thank God. But that's my whole point, is like, if you can start to establish the lore, it makes things, you know, more interesting. Mia here,
I absolutely agree.
She does say, I can have my opinion. I was just disappointed to have my own expectations. That's fine. Yep. All I'm saying is coming in and saying that it's woke, I think is disingenuous.
Yes.
If you don't like it for why you don't like it, that's cool. I'm fine with that. That's why we criticize Doomcock and why we criticize the Fandom Menace.
I absolutely agree. And that's what I've been telling everybody. If you have, look, is it perfect? No. Are there some things that, like, you could look at it and go, you know, this, that, whatever. I am absolutely fine with that comment. Yeah. That, you know, like, if you have fundamental things like you just didn't like about it, I'll have that conversation all day. To go off on Kevin Smith like he doesn't know what he's doing, like he just created, like you said, to be woke, that it abolishes and destroys our childhood and stuff. Listen, I got this book, man, after part 1. Okay. And a guy named the Richard, who is a good friend of Robert Meyer Burnett, who's on my show occasionally, he turned me on to this book. And this right here is every mini comic ever made.
Okay.
Ever made. I mean, and it goes, dude, it literally goes from, like, before there was a cartoon. Okay. Like, before there was a Prince Adam, even in the mix, where He-Man was just this barbarian that ran into a cave and put the armor on, and he got the power from the armor, not by turning in, not the whole Superman trope, you know, where he turns into He-Man, but that he was always He-Man, and that the strength that he got was from the armor that he wore. From that, I mean, all the way up through the 2000 series, all of the She-Ra stuff. I mean, everything that you could possibly think of is in this book. And what I love about it is it shows that Kevin Smith, you know, people want to say, well, he said he wasn't a fan of He-Man. He did his homework. He surrounded himself with people who knew the lore. And that's, dude, you use the exact word that I've been saying so much. It's the lore. He pulled that Tila thing out of episode 6 of season 1 of the original cartoon and expanded upon it, because it was never touched up. I think they did one more thing where they kind of like talked about it again, who she was, but it was not something that was ever brought up again in the series, you know, like as a major plot point. They never really talked about it. It was just then known that's who she was, right? And for him to bring that back and to show us our characters all these years later, I saw people complaining about Skeletor, that it's like, oh, like Skeletor, like, how does Skeletor get the power? Only He-Man can have the power. The whole freaking thing was based around Skeletor trying to get the power. And I mean, in the early days, you know, it was that the power sword got split into 2. The fact that he reestablished that the power sword splits into 2, and that, you know, because in the early days, Skeletor had one half, He-Man had the other half, because He-Man didn't get the power from the sword, you know, but the power sword unlocked Castle Grayskull. That's why, like, I've got the toy back here, and it's got a little hole in the front of it, because when you put the swords together, it was big enough and you could unlock the drawbridge. That was the lore. That was what the toys were based of. That's why the toys don't look like the cartoon, Matt, is because the toys were based on these comics, because they came out a year and a half, 2 years almost before the cartoon came out. So Yeah, when I heard you here talking about this, man, I have gone round and round about this, and anytime
Yeah.
I'm not even mad at anybody anymore. I just look at it like if you don't understand what Kevin Smith did with the show, that's fine. But it also kind of tells me like some of the people who've come at me like hard, you can tell that it's like, tell me you don't know really anything about the lore of
Right.
Masters of the Universe without telling me you don't know anything about the
Yeah.
lore of Masters of the Universe.
I mean, never mind, like, just there's all that, but then look at like what the end of the season set up,
Oh, dude.
you know, and
Oh
it's
my
like
God.
a lot of people. And again, I am not. I watched it as a kid. I'm not that deep into it. I had to go look up what that was
Mhm.
at the end, and I'm all like, oh, that's cool.
Yes, it
You know, because like that's the whole point is when you're intrigued by the ending of it, of what's going to happen. And I just want to bring this one up real quick here. This is from Kevin Smith earlier tonight. Someone had tweeted him and said that their friend was a huge He-Man fan and had recently passed away, and that his friend would have really liked it, would be smiling from heaven. And Kevin here says, that means the world, or rather the universe. My likes are filled with love for Masters of the Universe Revelations. After part 1, I had to wade through some bile to read positive reactions. But since part 2 dropped, the anger directed at me in July seems to have subsided. Fingers crossed for season 2. Now, that's, of course, going to get a whole bunch of videos
Oh yeah.
brought
It already
out.
has. It already has.
Oh, I'm sure it has. Like, people are already going to be going, it's good. But
Yeah.
it's like, again, even looking at the Rotten Tomato score, which they're going to argue is like why it's terrible or something. But just again, the 52% here is just
There's
half
only
the people
52% of the people that did not, of those
didn't care for it.
498.
Yeah. And so it's like the show is, and again, looking on Netflix trending, the show is on Netflix trending. It's not in the top 10, but then again, they've released so much in the last couple days.
Well,
that-
and it's Thanksgiving weekend. Like, how many
Yeah.
people travel? How many people, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, people are trying to catch up on stuff now over the weekend. I did the same thing. I didn't even travel anywhere. My family didn't even have like a traditional Thanksgiving this year because of everything that happened in my family's life this year. But even then, like, we didn't get a chance to watch everything. But I mean, we were part of this thing that like Tuesday, we watched this. We watched the entire thing in one setting.
Yeah.
We were just like, 'cause
Didn't
we
you
were
like
looking
dip
forward-
out of a live stream to go and watch it or something like that, like at 2 in the morning?
No, I was on with you.
Yeah, I thought you were
and
gonna go. I thought
was-
you were gonna go watch it.
I was going to, and I may have, but we won't tell Tiffany that. So officially, no.
Okay.
Officially, no.
No.
I watched it. See, I
waited
went to
till
bed and
next-
I watched it the next morning when I got up. I was like, I want to be awake and
Oh,
you know.
I just had to ingest. I mean, look, I've got the toys, but I am a good husband. My wife found, I have a Tila pre-ordered and will be here soon, but my wife found one in the wild and brought it home to me. And then she goes, I hope you really enjoy this, because she collects toys too. And I said, honey, I said, you can have the first Tila. And so I let her have the Tila. But like that's the thing, man. Like the whole first thing, look, it's what we talk a lot about, right? The fandom menace, right? And we talk about, and it's not just fandom menace, it's like all those, that group of people that they just hate everything. And look, Star Wars is not that bad right now in the public eye, right? So I think they're having a problem now. They're jumping from thing to thing, man. It's like they've jumped to Marvel. Now all of a sudden Marvel is the enemy. And then this came out, and you notice how it's everything that they attack is like some classic thing that like I grew up with in the 80s, other people grew up with in the 80s that they love. And they
Exactly.
constantly try to paint this picture that it's ruining it, it's destroying it, it's making
The
it
X-Men
woke, it's all these
97
things.
revival is gonna be woke and
Yeah, Scott's bulletins talk about it like in the chat there, because they try to make it out. Well, Tila has a buzz cut on one side, so she's gay, she's a lesbian.
oh my god.
First of all, who cares if she was? But she's not.
Exactly.
They even showed that she's still pining. Yeah, North Star, you're absolutely right. They still don't know their lore. They don't understand this stuff. It's superficial fans is what it is. I know what it is with He-Man because I watched He-Man and I was that kid for the longest time, right? But my cousin and my other friends and stuff were those kind of fans too, where it's like they would watch He-Man every afternoon. We'd watch He-Man, right? And I had every He-Man toy. I had Castle Grayskull. Castle Grayskull scared the crap out of me when I was 8, right? I can show it to you. It's got black eyes, and you put that in a kid's room at night with the shadows coming in through the window and stuff. That'll freak you out.
Yeah.
But the
Even
thing
in
is,
Elmos
man,
freaked me out.
see, there was a difference though, and this is the difference, and this is what I'm finding. There's a difference between the kids who came home after school every afternoon, right? And they turned on He-Man, and they liked He-Man. But you know what? They sat there to the boring part, right? Going, oh man, they're like talking about this story or this crystal, and Skeletor's like doing something stupid. Oh wait. He's lifting the sword. Oh, he's He-Man. Yeah, get him, He-Man. Get him, He-Man. And it was like, it's just that it's a childhood innocence. I get it, but it's only focusing on the cool lights and, you know, he's super strong. And look, he's beating up Skeletor. And yeah. And I saw so many tweets from people going, this show should have been ... should have been He-Man beating Skeletor. Just massacring Skeletor. Well, that's not a story.
That's not
like, why do that? Why bring it back after all these years just to say, hey, every episode is just going to be just like when you were a kid and he's going to turn into He-Man and he's just going to beat up on Skeletor. That's not a story. Then there were kids like me who I would buy the toy, I'd rip it open, and then I would read that comic, that mini comic, like over and over and over again. And it goes back to what you said, Matt, lore. All about the lore. And I did that with everything in my childhood, dude. When it was He-Man or Masters of the Universe, I would read everything I could about Masters of the Universe. When it was Star Wars, I was reading every Starlog magazine, man, and every little thing that I could get my hands on that would talk about, you know, the lore of Star Wars. And every little, I mean, we got very little back then, but every little detail that we could get from like an interview with George Lucas or, you know, or something like that, I would sop that up, man, like gravy, dude.
People these days, they have it. The kids, I'm gonna go boomer for a second. The kids these days, they've got it all lucky. When I was a kid, and Enosh knows what I'm talking about here.
Yep.
If you missed a magazine, or if you were trying to find an old magazine that you couldn't get access to, you'd have to generally go to the library and hope that they had oh man, what was it called? They had the you know what it is, like they had the scans.
You're not talking about the Dewey Decimal System. You're talking
not the
about
Dewey
no Scantron or whatever.
It was no. It was basically like
yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
The microfiche.
Yeah. Microfiche. Basically, you had to go and like find these, like, you know, you'd find magazines or newspaper and they would just all be scanned and you could like print out certain pages or whatever. It's like, this was our Google back in the day sort of thing. You know, like I remember in the summer of, I think it was 95, whenever Clueless came out, I was infatuated with Alicia Silverstone. And so her being in Masters of the Universe, I thought was really great. But like I went through and I'm looking through like all of the Teen Bop magazines to like read interviews and like learn what I could. And again, I'm just like, you know, going to the library and I'm like, oh, do you guys have like Teen Bop or Tiger Beat magazine from like April of last year? Right. And they're like, okay, nerd. You know, like it's over here maybe. And I would just find stuff and I would read stuff, you know, and like that's kind of how we had to do it back then. Now you can just go on and find their social media and like, you know, send a make plan emojis or something. But you couldn't do you couldn't do that back in the day. You had to use pen and paper like a real psycho.
So I will answer that question that was just up there. I don't know if Pixel Dan did his own book, but they do thank Pixel Dan in this book. You know, so there you go. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff, man, that people just don't know about. Like Teela served many different roles. Like Teela was not just Teela. She was also considered the goddess, the warrior goddess. So that's why like her action figure actually came with this whole snake headdress thing. And like there you can see the you know, them talking about the lore of the two swords and stuff. And then here, like this is Teela being told that she's one of the guardians, you know, to guard the castle and stuff. And that one day there's the prophecy that someone will come and claim both swords, because one half of the sword was in one place in Eternia and the other half was on another place. And there's Skeletor trying to get the, like, one is at the highest peak on Eternia And so Skeletor was trying to do that. And then you can see here, like Skeletor beats He-Man here for the sword, and then is using it to enter Castle Grayskull. And that was how you learned how to play with these toys, because there was not even a cartoon for the first I don't know if I messed up there. For the first over a year and a half. Like, that was the only way that you got to learn about these characters, was through reading this stuff, man. And it's just, it to me now, at first I was really pissed off at everybody, like I'm still pissed off at the people who are all with the wokeness and all that stuff. You know what I mean? That stuff, here's Merman beating He-Man because he takes off his armor. Because once he had the armor off, he was a barbarian dude, but like that stuff that people just don't know. Or they choose to ignore because it doesn't fit the new, I don't know, what you would call it, the new way of looking at things, where we got to have a negative thing about everything. We can't just like anything anymore. If it's either all or nothing anymore. It's either all woke and horrible and it destroyed my childhood, or I love it and it's the most greatest thing. So
no, I totally agree with you. I think a lot of people out there are just they just want to be upset at stuff. Like, look at this here. I found this tweet from Loza. Says, speaking of geeks and gamers, it's funny how they're talking about He-Man stuff 4 days after part 2 came out. They really are a dying channel. Oops. And what they say here is, I guess the thumbnail is, Kevin Smith lied, Masters of the Universe Revelations part 2 disaster.
Yeah.
What about it? I mean, like, what? The fact, just, again, like, I agree, they really are a dying channel. It's just outrage after outrage after outrage. Yeah. A lot of people are just, ridiculously... I mean, and Jeremy will admit, like, he's not a fan of this stuff. He probably never dove into any of the lore. Let's see. Sox Bulletin says here, I heard heel versus babyface from the fandom menace lie about Hawkeye. Yeah. All you have to do is say, I heard heel versus babyface lie.
Or say.
Yeah. And then that, of course, becomes the end of that conversation.
Well, people are mad about
just
Skeletor.
His name.
People were mad about Skeletor, and I find this funny, and I mentioned this, like, okay, like I'm a big fan because I grew up during that time, so I'm a big fan, huge fan of Skeletor, right, as a character, and I love, from G.I. Joe, I love Cobra Commander, for example. Okay,
very similar characters.
Very similar characters. In the fact that they're the leaders, they are in charge. Yet, at the same time, they're very bumbling and fall for a lot of stupidity, and their own ego gets in their way most of the time. They blame everybody else. They blame all their henchmen. They blame all the people working for them, but they let their own ego get in the way. And I saw a thing talking about how in part 2, and I don't know how, like, spoiler we want to go, but there's a part in part 2. It's not really that bad, just say it this way, where Evil Lynn basically tries to seduce Skeletor. Right. And to get him to do what she wants him to do. And I saw people who are like, Skeletor's smarter than that. He's an amazing villain who would not fall for that kind of thing from Evil Lynn. That stupid Skeletor is one of the most awesome villains ever made. Skeletor wouldn't be that stupid to fall for it. And again, it's like, okay, so you just really never really watched and actually paid attention to these characters. There's a reason why Skeletor, like, was absolutely shocked when he won. You know what I mean? Like, when he got the power, but also it's people who don't understand, like, even the power that He-Man calls down, because the sword is a conduit for the power. It's always been a conduit for the power, you know, and people I've seen people arguing that, how can Skeletor have the power at the same time that He-Man has the power? It's because the power is not,
selective.
It's infinite. It's infinite. It's not, just to He-Man or just to whatever. He-Man was the chosen one. He-Man is the chosen champion. That's why he is the spark. When he talked about that, how he's the spark that calls down the power. But anybody who has the sword can have the power. Like, that was the whole point of Skeletor for the entire run of everything, was he wanted to have the power. The problem is that then you can give that power to others, and that would and I've seen people say
which he did do, which he did do.
Yeah.
Oh, I know. But the thing is, people in this part 2, I've seen the complaints from the usual suspects going, "Oh, he can't do that. That's not a part of He-Man. He can't. How is it that Skeletor, He-Man, Battle Cat, and Evil Lyn all have the power at the same time? That's ridiculous." No, it's not. What does He-Man do every time he transforms? I have the power. Points the sword at Cringer.
Yep.
And blast Cringer with the power, and Cringer becomes Battle Cat.
Also,
it's because you can if you're the focus of it, you can refocus it and then bestow others with the power. That's the point.
Yeah, and also isn't like they, I'm not sure if I understood this correctly or not, but didn't they also explain that the current sorceress can also have the power at the same time as the He-Man, because she's the one that directs the power to him?
Well, it's a little different. She controls the power, which was one of the things that I liked in part 2 that they actually brought up, is the fact that the sorceress is actually more powerful than He-Man. Always has been. And I just don't get that. Like, nobody had a problem with that back when we were kids. Like, you just understood that the sorceress was in charge, right? He-Man was the guy out there doing the thing, but the sorceress was always in charge. So people are just pissed off now that it's Teela. The only thing that they did change is the fact that Teela, as the sorceress, can go outside the castle without being Zoar the Falcon.
Which I liked because she learned about this whole creation of the universe in Zoar, and like how, and the reason why you were constricted to the tower and to the Tower of Grayskull was because you didn't know the full history, and you didn't let things in, and like what her mother was like, I let go of things. That's the reason why I was constricted, and I didn't learn the full history, and then Teela was like, okay, so I have to keep everything in and learn everything, and that's what I liked about it, like that she's the true sorceress.
It's like, again, it's all about that expanding of the lore.
Exactly.
Good stuff. What was the? I'll say. Oh, I want to say this though. There's a line in I think episode 4 when He-Man gets the sword, calls the power, and also just as a quick side note, I mean, if it's if the power, if you in the pre-Turnia episode in part 1, they can still be there as their champion, right? Like once they die, they can still go and take on the image of their champion, and they still have like abilities. So it doesn't seem like the power is ever just like, you can do the conduit, but it's not just like one person sort of thing. But because you're right about Cringer becoming Battle Cat, absolutely right there, exposes that. But what I thought was great was the whole point was when they need to fight Evil Lyn or Dark Lyn, and he makes Skeletor, he turns him back into Skelegod. And Skeletor's like, the hell?
Right.
And then He-Man just goes, I want you to know what it's like to be the hero for once. And I was like, oh, snap. That's like that's such a He-Man thing to do.
Yep.
And that was really good. And the whole point was just, again, was showing that it's not about what you do with the power. Or it's not about, it's not about having the power. It's about what you do with the power. And that was the whole argument there. So all of these people that are complaining about that, I don't think they've really sat down to watch this shit. It's like listening to those guys.
They play in the background, and they like look at the scene. They're like, oh.
Well, Yellow Flash, when we watched Yellow Flash's video the other night, me and Brian did, that was our whole point. Was Yellow Flash even admitted in his whole tirade about it that, well, I haven't watched this yet, because, like, I don't know that I'm going to waste my time and watch this, acting like he's too cool for school, right? Like he's too cool to watch it, too cool to be bothered with it. And then he's like, well, yeah, I'll probably watch it, and it's like, dude, it's the same thing you called out Mecha Random for, right? Like, why are you reviewing things that you've never even seen?
Exactly.
Exactly.
Like, because
if you have a legitimate issue after you see it, fine. Again.
Yeah.
But
again, I don't have a problem. Like, I'll criticize these people, but I don't have a problem if you legitimately attempt to understand what it is that you're watching.
Yes.
A lot of them, though, they don't. They just want to chase the algorithm. They just want to chase the outrage. Whereas you and me and Caden will be like, hey, so there was this line of dialogue that really kind of opened up this train of thought for what they were trying to do in this moment. That was pretty cool, you know, and like actually having the in-depth discussion on it that I would hope would also inspire other people to give it a watch, or maybe if you didn't like it, give it another go. Sometimes it's short, so it's not long to get into. But there are things like, you know, with expectations where I'm like, I don't quite know how I feel about this right off the bat because of the expectation. Like, I'll give you guys a prime example. Spider-Man No Way Home. The hype is beyond hype at this point. I don't think that the first viewing of that movie is going to do it justice.
Probably not.
I really don't think that. It's like Deadpool 1 for me was like that. I was so into the marketing of it that when I saw the movie, I felt like I had seen everything. And I was kind of like, oh, all right, it was good, but it didn't wow me. Then I watched it again and I completely fell in love with it. And now it's a 10 out of 10, you know, because I saw what I was missing. I saw the heart that was there that I wasn't actively looking for in my first viewing because I was so caught up with what I'd already seen going in. So I think marketing is really bad for movies, but I get it.
Yeah.
But in this case, when I talk about Kevin Smith being vindicated, he was vindicated in part one.
I believe so.
And you know, I really feel that a lot of people are going to kind of fall in love with this over time. I hope it opens up the lore in a lot of other ways. And, you know, that's the whole thing. If you want to bring back nostalgia, give us something new. You can still play in that same field. You know, you can still play in the same sandbox, but just like now that you're older, use those tools and expand upon it, right? If don't just, you know, give me a stick figure, draw me a portrait.
Exactly.
Or something.
Exactly. I do want to see something expanded upon. Like, well, and Gavin C mentioned something like in here, right? About G.I. Joe Resolute, where he says Cobra Commander can be so threatening.
Yeah.
He was awesome in G.I. Joe Resolute. Dude, so G.I. Joe Resolute, look, I grew up with the cartoon, all those things, right? But when they brought that back, like at first, like I didn't really care about it, you know, to even watch it. And, you know, because by the later part of G.I. Joe, the second run of G.I. Joe cartoon, it wasn't as good as what I grew up with, right? And so I'd kind of gotten away from it. Well, and I'm a huge G.I. Joe fan, man. It's like I got G.I. Joe stuff all over the place now. But that G.I. Joe Resolute movie, I remember watching it, and one of the best things about that was that they kept the aesthetic of the 80s cartoon. Like you got a character like Bazooka, for example, right? Who chews bubble gum. He's a little ditzy and he wears a football jersey, right? They kept that. They kept the costumes, you know, but it was just updated, you know, in a different little thing. But it was serious. They actually took it serious. People died. You know, that was always one of the jokes about the old G.I. Joe cartoon was like you'd have an army over here of Cobra and an army over here of G.I. Joe, and they'd run at each other, and there's blue lasers and red lasers firing over, and nobody ever dies, right? And even in G.I. Joe, the movie, you know, when Transformers, the movie came out, they killed Optimus Prime, which was a huge deal. But then they were going to do the same thing with the character of Duke in G.I. Joe, the movie. But after, you know, Transformers, the movie, didn't do well at the box office, they decided not to release G.I. Joe the movie in the theater, and they just put it out as a like a
home
television
video?
movie. Yeah, no, not home video, but it was a television movie.
Okay.
Yeah, television movie. And so
you got
that. To see that. Oh, it's good, but the thing is they recreated the lore heavily, right, about what happened. But there were good things about it. But one of the things, you know, that people had issue with was that, like, they didn't kill Duke. They rewrote it because Duke was originally supposed to die. Serpentor comes out, pulls out one of his snakes that he turned into a spear, spears him right through the heart, and he dies. Because of the backlash with Optimus Prime, when Optimus Prime got killed, they totally took that away. And they're like, nope. So by the end, Duke is better. But with G.I. Joe Resolute, dude, in the first 10 minutes, Cobra Commander threatens the entire world and says, look, if you don't meet my demands within so much time, I'm going to blow up Moscow. And they're like,
no, he nukes Paris.
Is it Paris?
It's Paris.
I thought it was
he
Moscow.
nukes Paris, and like it was Paris, because I remember
it's been a while.
Yeah, because I remember
9 million people.
Yeah, they just nuked. I was like, oh my god, they nuked Paris. I remember watching that. I was like, holy shit.
Yeah, and Cobra Commander ain't playing. Cobra Commander ain't playing, man. And you know, as soon as that happened, it had my attention. I was glued to it for the rest of the movie, because I was just like, this is awesome, because it took
Yeah.
it serious. And that's what I felt Kevin Smith did with He-Man and with the Masters Universe. And also, I think it's important for everybody to remember. I love the line actually in part 2 where at the end they're all fighting. All of Eternia comes out in support, right? And they're going to fight this evil and everything, and all this stuff is going on. And He-Man goes off on Skeletor and says it's not about us, because it's not. Everybody, like, I love and I laugh every time I hear, whether it's Yellow Flash, whether it's the other two that got into the back and forth with him, with Kevin Smith. Was it the fish thing? Who are they?
I remember the ones you're talking about.
Yeah. Anyways, all those guys, I know who they are. I just can't think of their names right now. But all those people, as soon as they go, so the He-Man show. Oh, that's right. It's not a He-Man show. The cartoon back when we were kids was called He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. This was called Masters of the Universe Revelation for a reason.